I'm not gauging my life on their peace. I'm gauging my life on my peace. And even with all this chaotic, crazy stuff going on, especially with Rebecca, who has gone crazy, the Lord, in the middle of all of it, is just like this unbelievable peace.
Have you ever noticed how sometimes the loudest silences speak the most? That's exactly what's happening with Rebecca Lamb Weiss and her husband, Jonathan Weiss. While the rest of the Lamb family's dirty laundry is being aired out in public, loudly, painfully, and without filters, Rebecca and JW are just quiet. No public statements. No interviews. No Instagram lives. Nothing. And that silence. It's got people asking a lot of questions. Let's rewind for a second and get everyone caught up. The Lamb family isn't just any family. They're the ones behind Daystar, a major Christian TV network that reaches millions of homes around the world. Marcus and Joni Lamb, the parents, built that empire from scratch. It was their life's work. But now, things have taken a dark turn. Their son, Jonathan Lamb, and his wife Susie, came forward with a heartbreaking accusation. They claim that their 5-year-old daughter was sexually assaulted, and the person they're accusing is someone close. Very close. A family member. That alone is enough to send shockwaves. But what really surprised people is who chose to speak up and who didn't. Jonathan Lamb has been incredibly vocal. He's not just fighting for his daughter, he's fighting for truth, for justice, and for the future of Daystar, which he says was supposed to be his to lead. Susie Lamb has stood by him every step of the way. Together, they've put everything on the line to bring this into the light. But Jonathan's sisters? Rachel and Rebecca? Well, Rachel sided with their mother, Joni Lamb. And Rebecca Lamb Weiss and her husband, Jonathan Weiss, better known as JW, have been absolutely silent. And here's the thing, that silence doesn't feel neutral. It feels heavy. It feels calculated. It feels like something is being protected, but it's not clear what or why. Now let's talk about who Rebecca and JW are. Rebecca isn't just a random family member. She's the youngest daughter of Marcus and Joni. She grew up in the same spotlight that Daystar created. From a young age, she was part of the shows, the conferences, the media appearances. She married JW, who also took on a big role behind the scenes at Daystar. Together, they became a recognizable couple in Christian broadcasting. If you've followed Daystar for a while, you've definitely seen them. They weren't outsiders, they were right at the heart of it all. But when these serious allegations came out, people started asking, why aren't Rebecca and JW speaking up? Why aren't they standing with Jonathan and Susie, especially if this involves their own niece? Well, here's where it gets even more complicated. According to information that has surfaced online, and we have to emphasize, this hasn't been officially confirmed, there's a letter. A letter that Rebecca and JW allegedly wrote. In it, they expressed concern about someone's behavior. That someone is believed to be the same individual Jonathan and Susie have accused of hurting their child. If that letter is real, it would be huge. It would mean that behind closed doors, Rebecca and JW knew something wasn't right. It would also mean that, at one point, they were on Jonathan's side, maybe even trying to help. So the big question is, what changed? Why go from supporting your brother privately to staying silent publicly? Some people think it might be fear. Not the kind of fear you feel in a horror movie, but the kind that comes when your whole life, your paycheck, your reputation, and your family ties are tangled up in one powerful organization. Daystar isn't just a network. It's their legacy, their income, their social status. Speaking out could cost them everything. There's also talk of NDAs, non-disclosure agreements. Contracts that legally silence you from speaking about certain topics. If Rebecca and JW signed one of those, then speaking out might not just be risky, it might be illegal. And some sources suggest that Rachel, their sister, has been pressuring them not to say anything. That kind of family pressure can be brutal, especially when mixed with money, religion, and media power. And then there's the darker possibility. Maybe silence was the price they agreed to in order to keep their positions at Daystar. Maybe choosing sides meant choosing survival. Maybe loyalty to the organization mattered more than speaking out for the truth. But let's not forget the cost of that silence. Jonathan and Susie are out here, fighting this battle almost alone. They're raising their voice not just for their daughter, but for other families who've experienced abuse and cover-ups. Meanwhile, Rebecca and JW's silence is hurting that cause. When people with influence stay quiet during a crisis, it sends a message, even if they don't mean to. And in this case, that message looks like indifference. Or worse, complicity. It's sad, honestly. Because there was a time when the Lamb family seemed so united. On TV, they prayed together, preached together, traveled together. But now, we're watching that family fall apart, and the cracks are being exposed in front of the entire world. And what makes it harder to watch is knowing that Rebecca and JW might still care. That letter, if it's real, shows they once had the courage to speak up. But now, it feels like they've gone silent just when their voice could matter the most. This isn't just a family issue anymore. It's a test of character. It's about doing the right thing even when it costs you something. It's about standing with truth, especially when truth is under attack. So, what do we do with all this? We can't force Rebecca and JW to speak. But we can keep asking the hard questions. We can keep pressing for accountability. We can support victims and survivors. And we can recognize that silence, in moments like this, is not neutral. It's a choice. Here's what people are saying. Rebecca and JW reportedly got a loan from Daystar, the very network built by her parents, Marcus and Joni Lamb. That loan helped them buy a house. And on the surface, that kind of financial help might seem like a blessing. Who wouldn't want a little help buying a home, especially from family? But as the old saying goes, not all gifts are free. According to people close to the situation, that loan wasn't just a helping hand. It came with conditions, unspoken rules, quiet expectations. Essentially, it's believed that the money was used as leverage, a way to make sure Rebecca and JW stayed quiet when things inside the Lamb family started to get messy. Think about it like this. If your job, your home, and your reputation are all tied to the same people asking you to keep a secret, would you feel free to speak up? Probably not. That's what makes this situation so complicated. Because this isn't just about doing the right thing, it's also about survival. And it turns out, not everyone in the Lamb family played along. Jonathan Lamb, Rebecca's brother, is the one who stepped out of line. He didn't take the loan. He didn't tie himself financially to Daystar. Instead, he went to a regular bank and got a mortgage the traditional way. That might not sound like a big deal, but it meant something huge. He wasn't under Daystar's financial control. He could speak freely. And that's exactly what he's done. Jonathan has publicly accused someone very close to the family of sexually assaulting his 5-year-old daughter. He and his wife Susie have stood firm, even as the pressure around them built. But Rebecca and JW? Their story took a different path. At one point, believe it or not, JW was actually right there with Jonathan. Sources say he even wrote a letter outlining his concerns about Pete, the man Jonathan and Susie accused. In that letter, JW reportedly supported Jonathan's efforts to speak up and protect his child. That moment mattered. It showed that, deep down, JW knew something wasn't right. He wanted to stand for the truth. But then, something shifted. As the situation got more intense, that support started to fade. JW and Rebecca didn't say anything else. No more letters. No more standing by Jonathan. Just silence. And people began to wonder, why the sudden change?
I can tell you right now, and Jonathan, he's not going to mind. He did not get a loan to finance the purchase of his home. He went to a bank like everyone else. So he's not beholden to them. And at the same time, nobody's helping him. But the girls, they each went to Daystar and they got big loans at probably incredible interest rates. And they got their homes. Jonathan, I asked him personally, when I was there with them the other night, why didn't you get a loan? He goes, I didn't feel that was right. Yeah, through Daystar. Why didn't you get a mortgage through Daystar? And he felt it wasn't right. This is a man of integrity. This is a man that Marcus believed and knew and wanted to be leading Daystar.
One theory that keeps coming up is tied to that huge loan. If Rebecca and JW signed an agreement, something like a non-disclosure agreement, or NDA, then they could be legally restricted from speaking about anything that might damage Daystar's image. And in this case, that might include the abuse allegations, family infighting, or anything that paints the network in a negative light. These NDAs aren't like casual promises you make to a friend. They're serious legal documents. Break one, and you could face huge fines, or worse. You could lose your job, your income, and even your house if that loan is somehow connected to staying quiet. And here's what really throws people off. Daystar isn't just a business. It's a Christian organization. It's supposed to represent faith, truth, and integrity. So why would a church network need NDAs in the first place? That's the part that has a lot of people talking. Because if Daystar's goal is to spread the gospel and be a light in the world, why are they using tools that feel more like corporate silencing tactics than anything biblical? Even the Bible says in Ephesians 5 verse 11, have nothing to do with the fruitless deeds of darkness, but rather expose them. So why is a ministry working so hard to keep things hidden? Critics argue that these NDAs aren't about protecting sensitive business information. They're about protecting reputations and avoiding accountability. They're about keeping the truth locked behind legal walls. And if Rebecca and JW are under one of those agreements, and if they're still financially tied to Daystar through that $780,000 loan, it's easy to understand why they might feel trapped. Speaking up could cost them everything they've built. Their house, their job, their place in the family. That's a high price to pay, even for the truth. But here's the hard part, truth still matters. Especially when a child is involved. Especially when a family is being torn apart. And especially when people are watching, waiting to see who has the courage to speak up. It's heartbreaking to think that Rebecca and JW might want to do the right thing, but feel like they can't. That's the power of money. That's the power of silence. And in this case, those two forces seem to be working together to keep important voices quiet. So where does that leave us? It leaves us with more questions than answers. But one thing is clear, the silence from Rebecca and JW isn't random. It's not accidental. It's likely a result of serious pressure, both financial and legal. And until those pressures are lifted, or until they find the strength to speak out anyway, we might never hear their side of the story.
JW, it's my understanding, wrote quite an impactful letter regarding his concerns.
He did. He read it to me, and it was just laying out everything that he had saw, just all the different details that really led to Pete being the one that was a perpetrator. And again, that just showed you how they were standing with us 100%. But unfortunately, they've signed the NDA and they've chosen the path of silence.
God gives everyone free will. You cannot force them. You cannot. That's manipulation when you keep trying to push. We never wanted to control anybody to do anything. We said, make your choice before the Lord. We will go our way. And honestly, I'm really thankful. So with Becca JW, them making their choices, it's not some, they're just don't want to talk. It's a very conscious choice they've made. And I'm all about respecting choices and boundaries. Everybody will answer to God. I will answer to God. They'll answer to God. So they will stand before God someday for this choice.
When a family is involved in a public scandal, the hardest part isn't always what gets printed in the headlines. Sometimes, it's what happens behind closed doors. It's the tension, the silence, the phone calls that don't come anymore. The family dinners that feel empty. The deep, aching fear of being cut off from the people you've known your entire life. That's the situation Rebecca Lamb Weiss and her husband JW seem to be caught in right now. At the center of a storm they probably never expected to become public, they've chosen to stay quiet. And while many people are pointing fingers, calling them complicit, or suggesting they're just trying to protect their own interests, it's important to recognize how complicated this really is. Because speaking out, that's not just about telling the truth. For Rebecca and JW, it could mean being emotionally exiled from their own family. See, the Lamb family isn't just a regular family. They're deeply connected in every way, personally, professionally, spiritually. Their lives revolve around Daystar, a Christian TV network that was started by Marcus and Joni Lamb. Their relationships aren't just about holiday gatherings or group chats, they're built around a shared business, shared beliefs, and a very public platform. So imagine the emotional weight of going against all of that. Insiders say that Rachel Lamb Brown, Rebecca's sister, is one of the main forces pushing for silence. From what we've heard, Rachel has been firm in keeping everyone in line, doing what it takes to protect the family image and the Daystar brand. And then there's Joni Lamb, their mother. She's reportedly the one trying to keep the family united on the surface, all while ensuring certain topics never get brought up. Is that protection? Or is it control? It's a difficult question, and one only the Lambs themselves can answer. But when we look at the bigger picture, we start to see that this silence isn't just a personal decision. It's a product of a much deeper issue within Daystar itself. This is where things get really uncomfortable. Daystar claims to be a Christian network, a ministry, a place for faith, healing, and truth. But the way they operate behind the scenes? It feels less like a church and more like a corporation. When you're using non-disclosure agreements to keep people from speaking out, and offering loans with strings attached, it stops feeling like a ministry and starts looking a lot more like a business trying to protect its brand. That's where the lines get blurry. And it's where the pain gets deep. Because ministries are supposed to help people. They're supposed to stand for truth, even when it's messy. They're supposed to be a refuge, not a place where people are afraid to speak because of what it might cost them. And make no mistake, there's a real cost here. Look at Jonathan Lamb. He's Rebecca's brother, and once the vice president of Daystar. He had a solid role, a respected name, and a bright future. But the moment he stood up and said, "This is wrong," everything changed. He lost his job. He lost the support of many in his family. And yet, he didn't back down. That's powerful. Jonathan chose integrity, even when it meant standing alone. Even when the people closest to him turned their backs. Even when it cost him everything he had worked for. Now think about what Rebecca and JW must be feeling watching all of this unfold. They're stuck in the middle. On one hand, they're watching Jonathan lose everything for standing up. On the other hand, they're watching their other family members stay silent and keep their positions, their homes, and their public image intact. That kind of emotional pressure can tear a person apart. It's not easy to speak out when doing so might mean you'll lose the people who raised you. It's not easy to tell the truth when your whole life is tied to people who might shut you out for doing it. And if what people are saying is true, that their silence is being held together by financial dependency and legal agreements, it's even harder. But here's the thing, at some point, silence becomes a choice. It might start as fear. It might start as protection. But over time, the longer you stay quiet, the more it starts to look like you're okay with what's happening. That's the crossroads where Rebecca and JW seem to be standing right now. Do they break away from the silence and risk everything? Or do they keep protecting the image, and live with the emotional and spiritual consequences? It's a heartbreaking place to be. As Christians, we believe that truth isn't something we can bury forever. Even if it takes time, it always finds a way to come to the surface. In Luke 12 verse 2, it says, "There is nothing concealed that will not be disclosed, or hidden that will not be made known." That verse is a reminder, especially in situations like this, that even when people try to cover things up, the truth has a way of shining through. So what happens next? Right now, it's hard to say. Maybe Rebecca and JW are trying to figure it out. Maybe they're afraid. Maybe they're protecting their kids. Or maybe they've convinced themselves that silence is the safest choice. But the truth is, one day, whether in front of cameras or in the quiet of their hearts, they'll have to answer for that choice. And that accountability won't just be to the public. It will be before God. In the meantime, what can the rest of us do? We can stay informed. We can keep asking questions. We can pray, not just for Jonathan and his family, but for Rebecca and JW too. Because at the end of the day, this isn't just a scandal. It's a spiritual crisis. And the people at the center of it are real human beings who are hurting, confused, and under immense pressure. So as we follow this story, let's do it with compassion, not just curiosity. Let's hope for truth, but also for healing. If this story moved you in any way, we invite you to keep this conversation going. Share this video. Talk about it with people you trust. And don't forget to subscribe so we can keep digging into stories like this. Stories that matter, even when they're messy. And most of all, stay prayerful, stay grounded, and stay aware. Because when people stand for truth, even in the face of silence, it changes everything. We'll see you in the next video.